This is another archival upload of some of my previous mix critique videos. I apologize for the vertical format that this video is about to switch to. This is 271 to 275. This mix was sent in by The Clouds.
Well, it seems as though that little lump in your throat.
Alright, so all the individual elements here sound pretty good, except maybe the drums. I feel like the drums could be compressed a little more. I feel like they don't really feel like they're hitting as hard as they can. Like, it sounds like the drummer had a fair amount of energy, but it's not really translating into the mix very well. So that's probably a little bit of compression, it's probably levels. But other than that, all of the individual instruments and the vocals sound really good. The biggest problem here is the overall balance of things. The faders definitely need to be rebalanced. Like, nothing really feels like it belongs together. That's partially a balance, and that's also probably partially a mix bus compression issue. All the instruments sound good individually, but they also all sound individual, if that makes sense. It doesn't sound like a group. It doesn't sound like a bunch of stuff that's meant to be together. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but the bass is too loud. I love bass, I'm a bassist, but it's definitely too loud in this track. The guitars and the vocals feel like they're at a pretty good level, but the bass definitely needs to come down. The piano seems like it's sitting pretty well also. Like, all of those like really heavily mid-range instruments sound like they're at a good spot, but the bass has definitely been turned up too much. It's starting to muddy things up, but it's also masking the kick and the snare, specifically in the low end, because the bass is turned up so much. This mix was sent in by Dalton. Alright, I can tell you have an overwhelming amount of sub-frequency information. Like, I can almost not quite hear it on these speakers, but just the way that everything is reacting right now, I know there's way too much subs going on. Honestly, man, other than the sub frequencies, it sounds pretty good. Like, if you just clean up the low end a little bit, back those subs down, maybe take a little bit out of the low mids and some of that like background stuff to clean it up a little bit, probably sound a lot better. Other than the subs, honestly, the only thing that I'm really hearing right now is that perk is getting a little harsh. Not a lot, mind you, but just like enough that I'm noticing it. I would maybe try to EQ a little bit of the top end out of that. Not a bunch. You don't want to like completely neuter it, but like it's a little over the top. Yeah, man, honestly, from like 200 up, it sounds really well balanced. Like, it sounds good. It's just those sub frequencies. They're really overpowering. On my system, I don't have like an overwhelming amount of low end response. So if it's that overpowering on this system, anyone with a subwoofer is going to be hearing way too much low end. You gotta back that down. I'm not sure what you're monitoring on. I don't know if you can actually even hear that low end, but like, it's really overpowering. Everything below, like probably below 200, but definitely everything below like 100 needs to be brought down a lot. This mix was sent in by Kiefer.
From the minute you showed up.
All right, man, you specifically asked about the low end. So far, that's the biggest problem. You have like a good amount of sub frequencies, but there's a gaping hole in your low mids. Between like 200 and 400 hertz, you cut out way too much. Like, especially in the bass, like that's supposed to be where we get a bunch of information from the bass guitar, and it's almost non-existent in that frequency range. That's a big problem. As a result, the guitars sound really thin. They're almost sounding harsh. You probably cut too much low end out of the guitars as well. Like, your low mids are a big problem here.
Something crazy happened when you took me.
You've also boosted the high end in the guitars way too much. They're even overpowering the vocals in the top end. Usually the vocals is going to be the most prominent thing in the top end in most cases. I know there's a bit of a lower vocal here going on, but even with lower male vocals, you'll still usually have a lot of top end information. Where the guitars are right now, there's way too much top end and not nearly enough bottom end. And honestly, they can probably come down in volume because they're just masking the vocals. Other than that, the vocals sound kind of amateur. The performance itself can be a little bit better, although tuning can help that. But more than anything, like, it kind of sounds like they were recorded in not a great room, and that's a problem. Also probably with not the best mic and preamp, but I mean, I'm not trying to tell you to go buy more gear here, but treatment in general is going to be really important for recording something as quiet as vocals. This mix was sent in by Parker. The The very beginning sounded really good. Like, he had a really good balance on everything. When that lead guitar lick came in, guitar sounds a little thin. It's a little piercing in the high frequencies. It could also probably come down in volume a little bit, but it sounds like you boosted a frequency in the guitar that I probably wouldn't have boosted in the guitar. It's making it sound thin rather than filling up the space like it should here.
Top of things that drive me wild. I could tell by your eyes from
Again, we got a really amateur sounding vocal. It doesn't sound as full as it can. It's missing a lot of top end here. Once again, it sounds like it was recorded in probably not a great room with probably not a great mic. Add some saturation at the very least to fill it out and boost some top end in that vocal.
a newfound love that feels so old. Yeah.
Yeah, man, so I don't really have a lot of advice to give you here. Most of the instrumentation sounds fantastic, except for that guitar. The EQ on the guitar is really weird. It's not quite sitting where it needs to in the mix. And the vocal sounds really amateur. I think it needs a little bit more top end. It definitely needs some more saturation. Preferably, it would have been recorded with a better microphone and in a room with better treatment. But as it is right now, it doesn't sound right. It just feels like a bedroom recorded vocal. This mix was sent in by Christopher. The guitar in the intro doesn't really have a great tone. I'm hoping it's going to change up a little bit when it actually gets into the rest of the track. It just sounds like you scooped way too many mid-range frequencies out of the guitar here. Again, hopefully it's just like an effect for the intro, but we'll see what happens.
Down where he is waiting around for the sun to rise, staring away.
The drums sound pretty good. You probably have the cymbals pushed up a little too high. I also feel like the drums could be compressed a little bit more than they currently are. Like, it feels like they're just lacking a little bit of energy. The vocals sound pretty good. I like the effects on it. The bass tone also isn't great. The guitar tone also hasn't gotten any better. And the bass and the guitar are not in tune with each other, so that's a major problem.
Where did it go?
Okay, I take that back. The bass tone actually isn't that bad. What the real problem there is what's missing from the mid-range and the low end of the guitar. That combined with the fact that the guitar is out of tune with the bass, it just makes the guitar and bass balance sound really weird. All right, man, so the biggest problem here is the guitar tone. You definitely cut way too much out of the guitar. The drums could be compressed a little bit more. You can probably take some of that like basketball-y tone out of the kick drum as well. But other than those couple things, it honestly sounds pretty good.